Linda.
Yay! 7% of communication is verbal. That means 93% of communication is nonverbal. That includes gestures, or body language, as well as tone. Our brain processes around 450 words per minute during communication, but only 150 of those are actually spoken. So what happens to the other 300 words that are stuck in our brain? Well, that comes out in our body language. So body language really gives us the full picture of what somebody is thinking. I am going to teach you a little bit about how to read someone's body language so you can get the full picture for better communication and better relationships. I'm going to teach you some hand movements as well as some eye movements. If you're speaking with somebody individually or in front of a group, and people are touching their ear or maybe their eye, that could be an indication that they're not seeing your message clearly. They might scratch their head or touch their hair. That could be an indication that they're not understanding very well. So if you get a lot of those indications, it's a cue to maybe back up, rewind, reiterate your message, or ask questions. Are you understanding me clearly? We never want to judge body language and assume we know what it means. It's simply a cue to ask more questions and get more information. If somebody touches their lip or their mouth or around their mouth, this could be an indication that they have something to say. If you don't read that cue, it may turn into 2 fingers. It may eventually turn into their whole hand, like they are literally holding the words back into their throat. It wants to come out so badly. So it's very important to read those cues. Have you ever been talking to somebody and suddenly their head is too heavy or their neck and their elbow is resting on the table? They are done with the conversation. You either need to wrap up or change the topic or ask them questions, get them engaged in the conversation. If you're talking to somebody and suddenly they put their hands on their hips, this can mean that they are intimidated. They want to look bigger. Animals do this. Cats and birds, they fluff up their feathers and their fur when they're in danger. That can be an indication that somebody that you're talking to is feeling intimidated and wants to look bigger. Let's talk about eye movements. If you ask somebody a question and they look down, they are going into their feelings to come up with an answer. If they look up, they're going to their thinking brain, or they may be going to their source or their God for an answer. If they look to the left, this is the left hemisphere of the brain, which is generally past experiences. And if they look to their right, it's the creative or the future. So as an example, if I ask somebody, what do you think about skydiving? If you've done it before, you're probably going to look to the left. And if you look to the left and down, which is feelings, you're going to be thinking about how it felt when you skydived. Now, if you go to the right, it may be an indication that you've never done it before, and you're getting an answer from the creative. How would that feel? If you look down to the right, it would be a feeling. If you're up to the right, it would be thinking and future. So very interesting. So I want to mention again, if somebody is looking down, you ask them a question, they look down, they're going into their feelings. If you are somebody that is uncomfortable with silence, get over it. It is very, 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 very important that you do not interrupt them. If you interrupt them when somebody is looking down to get that answer, they are going to be very unlikely to share their feelings with you in the future. Especially with children, teenagers, that you have a hard time getting them to talk to you. Do not interrupt that process. Even if it takes 10 minutes, wait for them to come back up and have an answer for you. There are feelers and there are thinkers. In relationships, it's very important to know if somebody is a thinker or a feeler. For example, I am a feeler, my husband is a thinker. This can be challenging with our communication. If I ask my husband, how do you feel about that? He is like at a loss for words. He just, I don't know. But if I say, what do you think about that? His eyes light up. He's like, oh my gosh, she cares what I think about it. And he will ramble on and on about all what he thinks about this subject. So it's very important to understand if people are thinkers or if they are feelers. The first step to learn body language is really to observe your own. So if you are listening to me speak and suddenly you catch yourself scratching your head or touching your ear, you want to ask yourself, oh my gosh, does that mean I'm not understanding? Why am I putting my hands on my hip when I'm talking to this person? Consciously catch yourself in this body language, and you will start to learn more about body language, and then you can observe others doing it as well. Body language gives us the missing pieces to what isn't being spoken. I talked about touching the face or the head, people not understanding clearly. You want to ask those questions. And the first step to understanding body language is start to observe your own. Most importantly, you can learn body language to improve your communication and your relationships with a more holistic approach to communication. Thank you, Mr. Husk.